Hello, hello, hello. think I got it turned on, didn't I? There we go. Good to see you. It's always good to be here. I always appreciate the opportunity to come to Sulphur Springs. It gets me out of Honey Grove. You told me I had till what, 7:15, and he told me that thing's called a clock. I don't know what that meant, but I don't know how to read stick. So you're stuck. I got prepared for an hour's worth. I wanted to see if somebody really did fall asleep on me, but you're not. Philippians is a great book. It's probably my favorite book. I've probably preached more sermons than anything out of the book of Philippians. I love the way he came through to the Philippian church. I love the way everything seems to build and strengthen. I like that because I need that. I need that in my life. And what I was given, or what I chose to do this evening, had to do with something that maybe you don't need it. I told you I'd point a finger, and it goes right here. You got me? It goes right at me. It was forgiving and forgetting. It's two of the hardest things in the world. To forgive someone and to forget it. It's impossible. The more I thought about it, I discussed it with my wife. I've talked to other people, and you know what? You don't forget. Why don't I forget? I know in chapter 2 and verse 5, and I just kind of jumped on into this because I'm going to make 7:15. In chapter 2, verse 5, it tells me I've got to have a mind like Christ. That's scary. That I have to have a mind like Christ. No one can think like Christ. No one possibly can think like Christ, can they? And I think he's told me that I've got to do this. This writer, this inspired writer, didn't just pen something. He said this is a possibility. So all of a sudden I've drawn a conclusion that there is a possibility that, you know what? I can actually grow up. I can mature. I joke with a lot of people that my dad lived to be 99 and some change. And you know why? He was trying to get me raised. And now I'm not joking about it. I think he was really trying to get me raised. And God's been trying to get me raised. And I'm the one that's struggling and pulling back. I'm not dealing this evening with the individual who says, I'm sorry or forgive me. I'm dealing with me, the individual that has to learn to forgive. That's the person I'm dealing with. I understand. I can't see your heart. How many of us are forgiving by nature? Are you forgiving by nature? Any of us? How many of you say, I forgive you? You've forgiven somebody, but you walk off going, they didn't mean it. You think they didn't mean it. And boy, I've got a lot of growing. I've got a lot of growing to do in my life because you know what? I've got to learn to forgive, and that's the first part of what we're going to deal with. The mind of Christ. He's hanging on a cross. Guess what he's doing on this cross? He's suffering. I'm in Luke chapter 23. And you know what he's doing on this cross? Not only is he suffering, but he's looking at people out there that's mocked him. They made fun of him, and they said, crucify him. You know you're going to die. I want you to catch the mind. Think about the mind. Think about yourself. Think about who you are. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he says these words. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Oh my goodness. Where's my legion of angels? Where's my protectors? Where is everybody else? And you know what? I don't yell for that. I've got a mind that says, don't hold this against them, forget it. Scary. I've got a mind that is to lead me in that direction. You know, I found out I really have a long ways to go. I've got a long ways to go. You know why? I live in a world, just as you live in a world. And you know what the world has told me? And when I say world, you know what the world represents in the Bible so often? The devil, sin, Satan, the old dragon. You want me to get them all in there? Because you know what? That's the world. And you know what the world has told me? You hadn't got to do it. It's okay. You don't have to do it. You don't have to mature. You don't have to grow up. You don't have to have a mind like Christ. You don't have to have a forgiving nature. And by nature, I don't. By nature, I don't. There are bad things that happen in this world. And the world says you can hold it against these people. You can hold it against them. And let me give you a little story about forgiving. This took place when I was in college. We had a speaker. I went to Oklahoma Christian. And he came in, and this was the story he told. Knew nothing about it. Didn't know the guy at all. He stands up in front of the congregation, of the devotional, the whole student body, and this is what he tells. My son, teenage son, was killed by a drunk driver. He tells us about this. Tragedy. He said, I became bitter and angry. My heart became black. I didn't like anything, and especially not that guy. He said, let me tell you how the story goes. As he went on, he said, you know what? I had no forgiveness in my heart. I couldn't even find it. You know, the attitude, the thought of, you know what, if you will open that jail cell, you don't need a jury, you don't need a judge, and you don't need an executioner. I'll take care of it my own self. He said, that's how I felt. He said, as time went on, the guy was sentenced to prison. We've heard stories like this, but this is the first time I'd ever heard a person actually tell this. And you know what he said? It started destroying my marriage. It started tearing the rest of my family apart. You know why? Sin was starting to take over. Hatreds were taking over. My wife couldn't do anything right. My children couldn't do anything right. The church couldn't do anything right. I was angry. God, you're not doing anything right. No room to forgive. Oh, I prayed. That wasn't doing it. He said, I tried it. Forget it. This guy is standing in front of a bunch of college kids telling this. Okay, where are we going with this? He said, I don't even know why. I went to visit the guy. He shows up. Other side, all I can think about, if I can get through there. Let me get him. And said, all this guy says with his head hanging down is, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. What do you say? I'm still angry. For some reason, he said, I went back. I'm going to shorten this story. As he told the story and he got on through, he called this individual out from behind the curtain, and that was the man. He said, I found forgiveness in my heart over such a tragedy that took place in this world that destroyed my life and was destroying everything I knew that was good. He called him out. Not only had he came out, the man had ended up, he was out of prison now, he'd served his time, went to Brown Trail School of Preaching, and he was actually doing a prison ministry, and he was helping him do it. And he said, I would like to introduce to you my brother. Oh, really? My brother. You know what? When you've got a group of college kids that are mainly sitting there about half asleep anywhere, and you can hear a pin drop in that auditorium at this point in time, you think he didn't touch people's hearts? The mind of Christ was one that touches people's lives. And sometimes we touch people's lives by our ability to forgive. If I keep it deep inside of me and I bury it deep according to the world, I can't reach anybody. I've got to learn to forgive. You know those saying, I buried the hatchet and I kept the handle sticking out? I watched a show one time and he said, you bury it and then you bury the shovel. You got me? We need to learn to bury. What it came down to is I hang on to things and I can't forgive because I haven't matured. I haven't reached a maturity in my Christian life. Hey, according to the laws of the land, you know what? At 56 years of old, you're mature. Okay? Right? Ask my wife if I've matured. She'll tell you different. She looked at me and cut her eyes up right then. I'm in trouble. We don't mature. I hang on to these little selfish things. He told me over in the book of Matthew, chapter 18 and verse 22. And you know, when you read this, and y'all know this, he says, I say not unto thee 7 times to forgive, but unto 70 times 70. How many is good at math? How many does that add up to? Does anybody? 490? See, I did my math ahead of time. 490 times. I've got to forgive you 490 times. You better not do it 491. You got me? I've got you. I think I can go through 490 times probably in a week. God, I want you to forgive me. Are we going to mature at a point within our Christian life where, you know what? I can reach a forgiveness. The ability to actually say, don't hold this against them. You know what? It's not the person. It's, do I have that kind of heart? There's the heart. The heart that I've got to have. I've got to learn to break so many habits. I've got to learn to break so many thoughts. And only God can do it. Because I'm losing the battle by myself. Maybe that's where we've gone wrong. Maybe that's where we miss it so often. Maybe that's where the Apostle Paul had so much of it in his life. A lot of times y'all think preachers are really writing down a lot of notes. That's it. That is what I'm doing tonight right there. If y'all want to know, it's got the whole sum of 5 scriptures on it. It's just because I couldn't remember them. You got to learn it. The Bible's full of it. Did you know that the King James Version uses forgive 56 times? Other versions use it all the way up to 75, some of them. But the King James, from Old Testament to New Testament, see, Google was good. It gave me some knowledge. 56 times. But it's the most important 56 you're going to find. One thing I've got to learn. One thing I need to do is learn to forgive. And not hang on, because that's a soul that needs saving. I want you to get that. If you get nothing else, you realize there's a soul that needs saving. And usually, if they reach the point, I use the term usually. Did you notice that? What did I do? I left myself open, didn't I? to failure. When they ask, not usually ask, when they ask, you know what? My job is to help that soul. To help it. Not drive it in the ground, not bring it up. You know, we're real good at that, aren't we? Now I want to go to part 2 right quick. I'm going to make it. Forgetting. Actually, the word that you're going to find forgetting is to get away, push away, move it out. Oh, man, forgetting something. You know, I told you the story. He didn't forget the story. But yet he called the guy his brother. So there's a difference in forgetting then, right? And I was getting ready for this. Over in Jeremiah 31:34, it talks about he remembers it no more. Our iniquity in King James, the things we do. You can go to Hebrews chapter 8:12. You can go to Hebrews 10:17. And guess what? Same thing. He doesn't remember our iniquities. What am I trying to learn here? The mind of God? But I'm a human. You see, he gave me this genetic flaw, right? Is that what he gave me? Therefore, I remember it? No, I've chosen to remember it. I want to remember. You know, we remember things, and usually it's things that's happened in our lives. I can't remember a name that you just told me. Why? But I can remember something that happened when I was 4 years old. How can that be? That I remember that and I don't remember something that just happened? Is it possible to forget? Is it something that is required of me as a Christian? Is to forget? I was getting ready for this, and it came up, and it's in John chapter 16. And in John chapter 16, I want you to just follow along with this just a little bit. And Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he uses something, and it's going to be about him leaving and their sorrow and everything. But I want you to catch this. Now, in verse 19, now Jesus knew that they were desirous to ask him, and said unto him, Do you inquire among yourselves of that I said? A little while, and you shall not see me. And again, a little while, and you shall see me. Verily, verily, I say unto you, that ye shall weep and lament, but the world shall rejoice, and ye shall be sorrowful, but your sorrow shall be turned into joy. Now here it is, 21. A woman, when she is in travail, hath sorrow, because her hour is come. But as soon as she delivered of the child, she remembereth it no more, the anguish for joy that a man is born into the world. I want to use that. You say, how's that fit in? You know what, Jerry? I don't know. It just sounded good, didn't it? It's really good if we can figure out how to tie this in. Isn't it amazing how sometimes we have to figure out how to tie something in? Hey, what did it say? You just forgot the pain. You just forgot the suffering. You just forgot the anguish when that baby was put in your arms. Absolutely worth it, wasn't it? Remembered it no more. So can I suffer here upon this earth? Can I have anguish? And is this telling me that as a woman remembers that no more, I can forget things that has brought me suffering, pain, and anguish? I think it is too. Jerry's one of the few preachers that agrees with me. I asked my brother-in-law last Sunday, and he just blew my sermon all to pieces. I believe it's telling me something. I believe it's telling me I can reach a point of forgetting. Now, I need to consider this point of forgetting. God remembered no more. That's what we looked at. I like that. God doesn't need to remember what all I've done. I need forgiveness, and He doesn't need to remember it. The Apostle Paul said, all these things, tribe of Benjamin, I was circumcised right. Let's consider the Apostle Paul. He was educated at the feet of Gamaliel. He had friends as a Pharisee. He knew people in high places. He knew people in low places. He was a go-getter. He surpassed people his own age. And he said, I put them all behind me. Those things I don't need to remember. As you went through Philippians and you got down through that chapter that Jerry read to us, and he stated what? Verse 13, brethren, I count myself not to have laid hold of, but this one thing I do. What was it? Do you remember what he said? I'll help you out. Forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto things which are before or in front. What did he say about my life? I forgot it. Do you realize that's the only time he really ever penned anything about his physical life? He didn't pen nothing about that. He talked about him suffering for Christ, the things he did for the ministry, all those things, but he never talked about the Apostle Paul and what I had until right there. And he said, that's loss. So if I can't forget, what am I going to do? I'm going to drag a lot of stuff along, am I not? He could have brought the tribe of Benjamin along. He could have brought his circumcision along. He had to deal with that in the book of Galatians, if you remember. He could have brought a lot of things along. He could have brought some false teaching along. I'm telling you, if you don't mature, if you don't get the mind right, you learn to forgive, which I say he is telling me I can do, because you know what? I'm living in the past. How many of you want to go back and redo? I've asked that question many a time. Would you like to start over and redo this back all the way from kindergarten? No. I don't want to do it. Would I do anything different? Probably not. I'd probably do the exact same thing in the same circumstance. You see, I've reached a point where I've got to learn to go forward. What's this going to do for me? How many souls is this going to save? There was a group of people in Acts chapter 2, and you know what? They were at that point. These were the same people who were yelling, crucify. These were the same group of people. I believe there was a bunch of them in that same group. And when they heard that gospel sermon, you know what they heard? You're a goner. You are going to not make it to heaven. You will not be in the presence of God. I need forgiveness. What do? He said, repent. Repent. Because the Father, what? He won't remember this. What's that going to do? It's going to take care of my sins, right? And you're baptized, and you rise again in the newness of life here upon this earth. And you have the opportunity to receive God's gift, the Holy Ghost. Thank goodness Jesus said on the cross, Father, they forgive them, they know not what they do. You know what? Every one of us here this evening has been in that position, including me. I've been there. Father, forget. I need to learn how to move on. Sometimes we don't move on. You know why I don't move on? I don't want to move on. Hey, I've won one argument in 24 years. Is that right, Victoria? Just shake your head, yes, please. And tell everybody, one. Boy, I remember that one. I don't remember the other 7,954 I lost. You know. We're like that. I forget. I've gone through things in my life that I didn't want to forget. I didn't even want to forgive. I've been in this situation. I know what it's like to have hatred. I know what it's like to have anger in my life. I know what it's like to have that. I don't know if I could have reached the matured point to say, I forgive, even if they'd walked up mask. And I sure didn't want to forget it. And I had a long ways to go. I had a long ways to go. I pray that I will always press on. I pray that I can get beyond. And you know what? I may remember it. But what do I remember? When it comes to me, do I reach the anger? Do I reach the hatred? Do I reach the jealousies? You know, you can think of some incidents and you automatically get angry just by thinking of it. You can get hatred in your heart by thinking of it. So a matured person takes something, don't they? As the man told the story, he didn't have hatred in his heart anymore. He didn't have anger in his heart anymore. He wasn't trying to get the jail door open so he could take care of the problem his own self anymore. He remembered what happened, but he turned it to a positive. He found love. He found peace. He found kindness. He found gentleness. And it built his faithfulness. You know what those things are? I didn't list them all, but they're the fruits of the Spirit. What it all came down to, he was able to connect back with God by having a forgiving, forgetting heart. If you don't reach that, you will lose that connection with God. And when you lose that connection with God, Satan's there with his arms wide open saying, come on in. I'll take you. You lose all of it. Very, very scary. I chose this one for one reason. I thought, I'm getting pretty good at this. I am. I'm pretty good at forgiving and forgetting nowadays. I forgot what I was angry about, so I just forgive you. I don't know if that has anything to do with my age or what, but, hey, it's working for me. What was I mad at you about? Do I even remember? It doesn't matter. A lot of it has with me to grow. And there will be circumstances in your life. You may have already experienced them. Where there's been a very deep hurt. There could have been a deep hurt. I'm not talking about your feelings got hurt. Or somebody said something wrong. We can do that too. But I'm talking about something that ripped your heart. Can you reach the point of saying, I can forgive, and I can forget it, and I can turn it to something else? If you can say that, then you know what you are acquiring? The mind of Christ. I'm through. They always told me I had to drop the mic. I don't know how to do that. Thank y'all. I appreciate it.